My name's Alice and I live in Split, Croatia, which you can see right behind me. I first came here from the UK about 4 years ago, just for a 2 month holiday, and I've been here ever since. And for me, I just love the outdoors, the great Mediterranean weather, small, close knit communities. It's a really great place to live. So I first came here during the pandemic. I came for a 3 week vacation to work a little bit, enjoy the beach, and relax. And I never left. So 4 years later, I'm still here, still enjoying being in Split in Croatia. And I'd love to tell you more about it, what it's actually like to live here. So when I came here, I was working a busy job in the City of London. I was working in marketing. I was traveling a lot across the country, living in one city, working in London. So I spent a lot of my time traveling, and it was quite a hectic, busy, fast pace of life. So that was one of the reasons why, when I came here, I just wanted to relax, chill, and it's really been the perfect place for that. So that's the reason why I left London. I wanted to get away from the office grind, to have something a bit more relaxed. And I now work for myself full time, so I'm self employed, which means I can live and work from anywhere. And why not here? Why not live and work at the beach? But what drew me to Croatia in the first place was the beauty of the place. So I came for a beach holiday. I heard about the beautiful beaches and towns and villages here. I wanted to come and see it for myself. So I actually flew into Dubrovnik in the beginning, and I took an island hopping trip up to Split, which took me a couple of weeks. And I mean, just saw some amazing things along the way. I visited 4 or 5 different islands in that time, and really got to know the country, the people, visited wineries, talked with local people in bars, and went to the beach more times than I can really count, and just really got to know the country, and decided that it was the place for me. So what do I love about Split, Croatia? The reason that I've stayed here now for 4 years and counting, it's really the quality of life. So you have a very beautiful place. There's a great community here. People are welcoming. There's a sense of just peace, relax. They have this term here, pomalo, which just means take it easy, chill. And that's the kind of underlying vibe. So everyone is, they go and spend hours with their families, relaxing, having coffee, taking things pretty easy. So it's a very relaxed pace of life, which is great, especially if you're coming from a very hectic, fast-paced big city, or stressful workplace. This is very much a change of pace, and that rhythm of life, it's very easy to kind of fall into and relax and enjoy. The nature is absolutely fantastic. You have the clearest waters, amazing beaches, mountains, really great scenery. I can think of so many amazing day trips that I've made to the mountains, to villages around here, exploring different places. It's a great place just to spend some time, explore, enjoy, and relax. Split is Croatia's second biggest city, and it's got about 160,000 people, so small but still enough to have a bit of a buzz about it. It's an ancient Roman city, so it's got a really beautiful old town with a lot of old historic buildings, culture, very rich history, amazing islands, beaches, lots of things to explore. So let's talk about the cost of living in Split in Croatia. So typical monthly costs would be between $2,000, $3,000. Depends on how much space you need, how many people are in your family, if you need a car, these kinds of things. So it's pretty affordable compared to big cities like London, Paris, New York. If we talk about the cost of apartments, you can find a 2 bedroom apartment for around 1,000 USD. If you want something a bit more modern with a nice sea view terrace and a bit more space, you'd expect to pay a bit more. If you're looking for something in the old town, so close to the historic centre and all the shops and restaurants, again, you'd expect to pay a bit more. And that area tends to get pretty touristy in the summer months. So most expats tend to live a little bit further out, let's say a 10 to 15-minute walk from the centre, in some of the more residential neighbourhoods around the old town. If you want something a bit bigger, let's say like a house with a garden or a villa, it's very hard to find something like that in Split itself. Most people tend to look in the suburbs where you have a few more options, and there are some nice towns just along the coast. Castellas is a series of small towns, and then also on the other side, Podstrana and Omish are also some nice towns to look at if you want, that big house or villa with sea views and a pool and that kind of thing. That's where you'd find that. It's pretty common for expats here to rent because the rental prices compared to the cost of buying a house tend to be very affordable. And it can be hard to find the right property. A lot of people spend many, many years looking for the right property, and it can be hard to find a good realtor, to find a good lawyer to make all that happen. So I recommend if you go down that route, make sure you really do your research, make sure that all the deeds are in order, and get a good lawyer to handle the process for you. In terms of other things, so groceries you have increased over the last couple of years, as all over the world we've seen that. But especially here, I think because it is such a tourist destination, especially on the coast, like there's a lot of shops who kind of put up their prices in the summer months and then they'll put them down again in the winter. So this is something to kind of watch out for. It tends to be much more cost effective to shop in much bigger stores, out of town. So ideally, if you have a car, you just drive out there, do your shopping for the week, for the next couple of weeks. It's much more cost effective. In terms of things like eating out, again, it very much depends where you go. So if you go to a very, very nice touristic restaurant in the centre of town, in the old town, it's going to be much more expensive. If you go to a small local konoba, or that just means like a tavern or an inn, an informal kind of place, which are usually family run, and they can be really fantastic food, and it's generally much better pricing because it's aimed at locals. And local people don't tend to eat out so much. It's more for like a special occasion. So local restaurants tend to be places where, you'll go and you'll order a big platter of grilled meats or fish, and everyone will kind of, all share it all together. So it's more that style of dining. Although you also have a lot of, more international restaurants, especially in the centre of town. A few Asian restaurants. So you can find a little bit of variety as well. Great pizza, great pasta. Croatia is very well known for those dishes as well. So yeah, there's something pretty much for everyone. Transport tends to be pretty affordable. You can fly from Split to Zagreb for about €50 off season, and then during the season it's maybe a little bit more, but it's still a very cost-effective way to do that route. Things like tolls tend to be reasonable, about the same as other comparable European countries like Italy. And things like getting around town, you pay €1 for a bus ticket, so that's again a really affordable way to get around. Things like going out for coffee, it's a very popular pastime here for people to go down to the river, which is the main promenade, and they'll sit there for hours having coffee and chatting. And coffee would cost around $3, let's say, and you can sit there for as long as you like. So it's a very nice chill thing to do. So yeah, it tends to be pretty affordable. For things like day trips, you can easily take a day trip out to one of the islands, take the ferry, especially in the off season, it's really affordable. You can buy the ferry ticket for, let's say, $5, $6 to go out to one of the islands, visit some of the beaches off season when there's no one there, have a great time. There's a lot of very affordable options to keep everyone happy. What's great about living in Split? The first thing I think of is the weather. So it tends to be pretty sunny, dry, warm conditions most of the year. Summers can be a bit hot, Winters can be a bit cold, a bit rainy, but generally you have good conditions, especially if you're coming from the UK or northern parts of the world where it's a bit colder. It's a very nice sunny place to live most of the time. And that leads me to the second one, which is outdoor activities. So it's great if you love to go hiking, climbing, swimming, sailing, paddleboarding, cycling, any of those kind of activities. There's a lot of options here. You have a whole string of islands just off the coast of Split, which you can get to very easily by ferry all year round. So you can go out there in the summer to escape from the tourists, which is a really nice thing to do. Go off and find some little beaches where there's no one there. Or in the winter, go hiking, go climbing. There's a lot of options. And we also have mountains. So you have the mountains and the sea right next to each other. So you can go off hiking in the mountains and then be swimming in the sea just a few hours later. You have really the best of both options. It's also great for exploring the wider region. So, a few times I've been off skiing in Bosnia or in Slovenia, which are both very close by. So you can just drive for a few hours, go for a ski weekend, have a great time, come back all in a weekend, which is awesome. And also Austria is nearby and Italy. So it's a good base for exploring more of this region and Central Europe. You also have Budapest, which is not so far away, and other Balkan countries like Serbia, also Albania and Greece, which you could drive down the coast and have a fantastic road trip doing that. Other great things, you have great options in terms of food here, especially if you're buying like locally grown, local food, local fish, local vegetables, things like that. They tend to have very good quality local produce, and it tends to be fairly affordable, especially compared to some of the supermarket produce that you'll see on offer. And it's a great way to support the local community. If you go to the local market, there are usually smallholders there selling their products, often kind of older people who have a little, their own little farm in their backyard, small holding, and they're just growing a few vegetables and selling them at the market. So that's a really nice experience to have. So what are the downsides of living here in Split? The first thing I'd say is summers can be pretty hot. So if you're used to living in Florida or another US state where it's pretty warm, you might not have a problem with it. Coming from the UK or New York or a colder climate, it is pretty warm and it takes a bit of time to get used to it. And that's why I'm filming inside today, because it is a pretty hot day out there. It's about 38 degrees, about 100 Fahrenheit today. And that is fairly common for July and August. And it's a good time just to spend the hottest part of the day indoors, wake up a bit earlier, go out and do your daily activities. A lot of people go out in the evening, so locals will mostly be inside during the day. The streets will be pretty quiet. There'll just be tourists out and about. And then in the evening, locals tend to come out and go for a drink or catch up with friends. So that's the kind of rhythm to life here in the summer. And you have to kind of adjust a little bit and take it a bit easier, especially if you have underlying health conditions and things like that. It's also a good time to travel, go somewhere a bit cooler. That's a really popular thing to do for expats living here. Other things, so things tend to be fairly slow. If you need to, let's say, renew your permit, renew your visa, get a new driving license, these kind of things, if you're buying a house, those processes tend to take really quite a long time. So be prepared to be a bit patient with those things. And it's a good idea to work with a local expert and a lawyer who can kind of push the process along for you. So just to bear that in mind. Other things, things tend to be a little less available than they would be in the US or the UK. So things like, if you're used to your comforts and your conveniences, if there are certain products that you like, you probably won't be able to find them here. Grocery stores here tend to be fairly basic. There's a lot less processed foods, which generally it's a great thing. There's less choice, there's less options. But again, you can adapt, you can order things online. I personally, whenever I go back to the UK, I always buy tea and I bring that back. If there's things that you want, you need to find another way to get them because they're not so available here. Another big part of life here is it's very seasonal. So that's something you might want to think about in terms of how long you stay here, and whether you use this as a base and then you go off and travel maybe some of the year. So in Split and other towns on the coast, winters are very quiet. So it's a time when there's no tourism. A lot of people, they either go away back to their home countries. Some local people, they move to Zagreb. Everything kind of calms down a lot. And that can be nice. There's less people around, less people on the streets. You can walk in the old town and have it pretty much to yourself sometimes. But it can also be a little bit quiet, a little bit, too kind of downbeat. There are some nice events that happen around December. So there's a big Advent celebrations with little market booths that pop up, live music, big shows around New Year with famous Croatian performers. So that's can be a very nice time to be here. But January, February, March tend to be a lot quieter. They tend to be a bit cold, so you have these very cold Bura winds which blow in, very, very strong winds, which can cause a lot of damage, and they're also very cold. And also a fair amount of rain, especially in November, and then usually March, April. So it's a good time to maybe take some time away or have some projects that you want to work on, something that kind of keeps you busy in the winter months. So let's talk about everyone's favourite topic, which is visas. How do you actually get to live here in Croatia? Croatia tends to be a bit trickier than other European countries. So the best option is if you have some kind of European heritage and you can claim citizenship for that country. I highly recommend you go down that route because it will make it so much easier for you. If you don't have that, you'll need to look at one of the other permit options. So that could be the digital nomad permit, which was introduced a few years back. And that's good if you have a business abroad or you have a work contract, you're receiving income from abroad. You can go down that route. And you need to meet a certain threshold of income, which I think it's around 3,800 US dollars per month. Or you can show that as a lump sum for the whole period of the permits. That would be an 18-month stay. So that's one option. And then you're also able to, at the end of that, you'll need to leave the Schengen zone for 3 months. Once you've done that, you can then actually come back and you could reapply again for that same permit. So that could be a way to extend your stay here for a few years. Another option, if you don't have that, there's a 12-month other purposes permit, which means that you can prepay your rent for a year and show proof of this to the police here. And that enables you to be able to get a permit to stay here for 12 months for the period that you've prepaid. And again, you could also leave for 3 months and then come back and again potentially reapply for that. I recommend if you go down either of those routes, definitely speak to an expert, speak to a lawyer, a relocation expert, just to make sure that you're doing it in the right way, because it tends to be quite bureaucratic here. These processes do take a long time, so be prepared for that. It can take anything from 3 to 9 or 12 months for your application to even be approved. But the good thing is that you can stay here. So as long as your application is being processed, you can stay here in Croatia the whole time. So it's pretty common that people will come, they'll apply for the permit, for the digital nomad permit, and they'll spend a year waiting for it, and then they'll receive it, and then they'll be able to stay another year. So it's actually a fairly, open-ended way of doing things. Other considerations are, so with the digital nomad permit, you can also bring family members. So if you have children or husband or wife, they can come along as well. You would just need to show, I believe, a bit more income in order to cover them. There isn't currently an option purely for retired people. The best fit would probably be the 12-month permit, unless you have Croatian heritage and you're able to actually get citizenship here, or if you have family members living here already, you might be able to use family reunification for that one as well. So hopefully that covers most of the options. So what about the community integrating here and local people here? What are those things like? So when I first moved here, I found it very, very easy to make friends, to meet people, even during the pandemic, which was when I arrived. A lot of friendly expats and locals and travellers, people passing through. It tends to be a fairly small expat community anyway. Most people know each other and they know each other's business, which can be good, it can be bad. But it's easy to make those kind of closer friendships. And if you've lived abroad before, you'll know that expats kind of support each other. There's a sense of, okay, we're all kind of aliens here, so it's easier to kind of make friends and have things in common in that way. In terms of getting to know local people, it tends to be a fairly traditional society, especially here on the coast in Dalmatia and in Split. And that means that people tend to get married fairly young, they have kids, family is very, very important. So it can be a little bit harder to really get to know local people and to make good local friends. They tend to have a little bit of a frosty exterior, I would say. So it can come across as a bit gruff. But once you really get to know people, they are very hospitable and welcoming and warm. And people are very, they'll happily share things with you. So my neighbours often give me fruits and vegetables from their garden, for example, or they'll give me a plate of food when they have a family celebration. It's a very kind of hospitable culture in that way. One thing that I really recommend if you do make the move is start to learn Croatian. It's quite a hard language to learn. It's a kind of Slavic language, and it's probably very different from any other language that you might have studied. And the grammar is pretty tough, especially for us English speakers. But even learning just some very basic things that you can say, really helps people to open up to you and to feel like you're trying to integrate. So I really recommend that, just to spend some time working on that. So if you're thinking of moving to Split, what would I say to you? I think the main thing is just come out here, try it, see for yourself and see if you like it. For me, it's one of the best places I've lived in terms of quality of life, beautiful nature, and a nice welcoming community. So yeah, try it and see if you like it.